talking about wills this morning, maybe something that, a lot of us don't want to think about, but if you were to suddenly pass away, your final wishes may not be carried out the way you want them to be carried out unless you have a proper will. That's where Fahra Salin comes in this morning. Fahra's with Field Law here in Calgary, specializing in this area. And right off the get-go, Fahra, if I do not have a will, what happens to, I guess, my estate?
I guess in a nutshell, there are laws in place that govern not only who can apply to administer your estate, but also who's going to receive your estate. So there is a bit of a backstop.
Okay. So, I mean, you're not kind of thrown, like your estate isn't like thrown into a whirlwind spin or anything like that. But there are little things that you need to pay attention to, right?
I think the situation when you don't have a will is that there may be rules governing how your estate's going to be distributed, but the bottom line is that you haven't had any input into who's going to do the job and then who's going to receive your property. And it leaves your family probably in a bit of a lurch.
Okay, so what's step one? If I want to get going on this, what's the first step?
Probably to call a lawyer.
Okay.
Who practices in the area.
Sure. And if I'm to contact you, then what would you do? I'm like, hey, my name's Ted. I need to set things up. I have a couple of kids and some money. What do I do?
Usually the lawyer will begin with a meeting. Sometimes that meeting involves a questionnaire beforehand or during the meeting. The lawyer is going to ask you about your family situation, the nature of your assets, who owns what, and what you want to do.
What if I have something quite specific that I want to do? Maybe it be with my remains or something that I'm saving to give my kids. Like, can you put that in your will as well?
You can be specific and you can be general. So it sort of depends on what it is that you want.
Okay. And what age does like a will kick in? Is it the age of majority, like 18 or? Except
in unusual circumstances, you do need to be 18 at least in Alberta.
To come up with a will.
Yep.
Okay. Now, what's the difference between like a will for when you pass away and a living will?
Mm-hmm. A living will is sort of layperson talk for what we call a personal directive in Alberta. And a personal directive is a document where you appoint someone to give your consents and make your health care and personal care decisions on your behalf.
Okay.
If you don't have capacity to do that yourself.
I see. So that's when you hear about the stories of someone, say, who happens to be in a coma, and say, if I fall into a coma, I could assign a specific person to make decisions on my behalf? Is that right?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And now why is that important?
That's important because if you don't have that, you've left your family in the situation where they may well have to apply to the court in order to be appointed to fulfill that role. Whereas doing that document is one of the more simple things one can do with a lawyer. It's fairly straightforward, it can be done quickly, and it avoids a costly and lengthy court process.
Wow, yeah, and especially if you're dealing with high emotions, if your loved one is lying in the hospital and you have to go to court.
I think that would be the worst possible scenario, is if you are in that unfortunate situation, it's nice to have things set up beforehand. Yeah,
no kidding. Okay, and so when we're getting back to like a will after I pass away, not a living will, but I guess a regular will, for lack of a better phrase, what's power of attorney? You hear that a lot.
Power of attorney is sort of like a personal directive, but for financial matters. So it's a document that is used while you're alive.
Okay.
You appoint someone to make your financial decisions for you and do everything that you could do with your property, except in the event that you've lost capacity, usually is when those documents are triggered.
Okay. And when it comes to specifically assigning something, say I wanted to specifically assign a certain dollar amount before my kids, like say I wanted to set all of my estate, I die, I pass away, I want to set aside my estate into lump sums for my kids to go to, say, university or that type of thing. Would that all be set up as well in your will?
Yes, and in fact, that's one of the most important reasons to do a will, especially when you have children.
Yeah.
Or you want to create a situation where you've got a bit of a long-term plan. All of those things can be incorporated into a will in the form of trusts.
I see, okay. And how tough is it to get all this done?
It's easy.
Okay.
We make it easy on you.
Sure, yeah.
Once you've sort of figured out in your mind what you want to do and provide instructions, it's fairly straightforward for a lawyer to draft that for you, go through it with you, make sure it meets your wishes, and then you sign.
And it's not set in stone. You can change it if you add kids and that type of thing, right?
Yeah, a well-drafted will usually anticipates a few life changes, but you are free to change your will at any time and as often as you want.
There you go. Fahra, if someone wants to reach you at Field, how do they do that?
Field.com.
Fieldlaw.com?
Yeah.
And then, of course, just search your name or search wills and estates and trusts.
Yeah, and there's a number of us there who practice in wills and estates.
Get your will done. It's not that hard. I am actually doing it this week, to be honest with you. There you go. Got to take care of the family, right?
That's right. That's right.
Who knows? Maybe I have a secret mug I'm going to give my kids in my will once I pass away. We'll have to see. Thanks for coming in, Fahra.
Thank you.